So let's start off with a bone. First thing you want to do is obviously pick the knuckle that you're going to be working on, and I'm going to be using a mixture of things. I'm going to be using a severe exposure wheel, some red food colouring, some bone wax. Now you could also use some regular scar wax, but I'm not going to be using that today. I'm going to be using latex, but if you want, the option's there. The first thing I'm going to start off with is the bone wax, and you just want to apply that over the knuckle. I find it a little easier to work with something that's metal and not my fingers, because this sticks to your fingers like something crazy. So using something like a cold metal is going to be a lot easier. But once I've smoothed out the edges, I'm just going to go over it with my finger very quickly to add a little texture. And then I'm going to take some liquid latex, and I'm going to start adding this around the sides. Once you've outlined the bone wax, what you want to do is you want to take your finger and you're just going to dab this around the edges to smooth out the edges. And this is going to help it blend into your skin a lot more naturally. If you leave an edge, well, you're going to see an edge and it's not going to look as realistic. And if you're aiming to make someone feel a little sick, you want to make this look as realistic as possible. It's all about the details, it's not about how much blood you put on top of it afterwards. Once that's dried, I'm going to be adding some latex thickener just so that I don't have to add 15 plus coats to make this look a little bit more realistic. I'm going to add this around the edge and then blend it out. I won't be using my finger this time, I'm going to be using the edge of the tool to blend this out. And then while it's still half dry, I'm just going to poke at the latex to give it a bit more texture. You want to make the skin look like some of it's been scraped away and the rest of it's just wrinkled back on itself because it's been stretched and then suddenly released back around the knuckle. I'm going to be using a small nail art brush, and then the salmon coloured colour, I'm just going to put that in between the latex and then the bone wax. And for the moment we're not going to blend, we're just going to put the colour right down there. And then I'm going to be using a fluffier brush, and I'm going to start to drag that around onto the latex and then over the bone as well. You do not want to leave the bone pure white. It wouldn't be that white, especially if it's just been in some kind of accident where it's been scraped on the ground. It's going to have little flecks of blood on it. It's also going to yellow a little bit as well when it's more exposed to the air. So you want to add that onto the latex and then drag it up onto the bone. Once I've blended all of that out, I'm going to be using a smaller pointed pencil brush. I'm going to be using the brighter red, and I'm going to add this into the edges, so around the bone and then also into the folds of the latex as well. And then you're going to drag that up onto the bone afterwards. Once you've added all the various shades of red, we're going to start adding some dirt. Now, I've got some old paintbrushes which I deliberately kept so that they're really scuffed and messed up and they stick out in all directions. They are no good for painting, but they're absolutely perfect for getting random textures on the skin for things like special effects. So I'm going to be using some black eyeshadow, and you want to drag up from the very ends of your fingers because presumably, let's say you fell off a bike, that is probably the direction that you're going to be hitting the ground. So that's where most of the dirt and the mud is going to be sticking to this wound. Once you've added the dirt, we're going to move on to the blood. Now the important thing is not to apply too much blood. I'm going to be applying it at the base of the scrape. This is where most of it is going to collect, and you want to put some of it onto the folds around that, and then take your fingers and dabble that around. It can't look like it's been applied by a brush. It has to look a lot more organic than that. So once we've just blended that around the bottom, I'm going to be taking a fan brush and then brushing that away from the direction in which your knuckle would have been scraped. Blend out the edges with your finger at the very top so that it looks like it's come out of the scrape. And then one last little trick you can do to make this look even more disgusting is take some tweezers. You're going to lift up the base of the latex, not too far because we don't want to lift the bottom of that from your finger. What you want to do is create a bit of an air pocket so that there's a space under the latex. You're going to fill that up with more of the food colouring or the fake blood if that's what you have. And then that way when you flex your finger, it's going to force the blood out and it's going to look like there's actual blood underneath there, which is getting pushed out every time you flex your hand. And that's it. You're done.